She said, well, just try it. And if you don't like it, then you'll do something else. And that for me was so eye-opening. And I think most of the people who have served a long time in the military can understand this and empathize with it. We are so used to the concept of I'm going to do this thing for 20 years and not I can try something. And if I don't like it, I can leave. I can quit. I can get fired. There's so many different opportunities. It's not necessarily forever.
Welcome to Exit Buddy, Veteran Stories to Guide You. This podcast shines a light on real struggles and triumphs of veterans navigating life after the military.
In each episode, we dive into heartfelt stories of resilience, setbacks, a little humor, and growth as veterans transition and find new purpose in civilian life. And here for the journey, we're your host. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Kathleen. If you're looking for inspiration, practical advice, or just a reminder that you're not alone in your transition, Exit Buddy is here to help you thrive beyond the uniform. Enjoy today's story from our next honorary Exit Buddy. I just want to share that I just love doing this show. It's a passion project. It's something that I know my fabulous co-host Rachel and I just love doing. So thank you, Rachel, for being in the studio with me today.
It is always a pleasure and always so much fun to get to hear some new stories, meet some new friends, and gosh darn it, just spend a little time together. So without further ado, I know we have somebody incredible in the studio today. So Kathleen, don't make them wonder who we have.
We're excited to welcome Stephanie Hahn today, a colonel in the Air Force Reserve with 21 years of service, who has made a very interesting and remarkable transition into enterprise software sales. Welcome to the studio, Stephanie.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Rachel. I really appreciate that warm introduction.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of introductions, I think this is the perfect place for the first question, which is we would love to hear your introduction into the military. How did you decide to join? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, well, I can tell you my path into the military was almost inevitable. I grew up in an Army household. Both of my parents are retired Army 06s. They both served 30 years to their country. And so it was just something that I think was natural. They didn't even have to discuss it with me. It was a path that naturally, it was something that I wanted to do. I always wanted to be a pilot. I always loved aircraft and aviation and appreciated flying. And unbeknownst to me, there are other paths to become a pilot. I thought, both my parents are from small rural towns. And my dad said, hey, if you want to be a pilot for Delta or United one day, you go into the military and they train you. And then when you're done there, then you go off and you can fly in the civilian sector. I went ahead and did Air Force ROTC. And my ultimate plan was to become a pilot. Unfortunately for me, I was a little bit too short at that time when I was commissioning. A lot of people wanted to be pilots, and the Air Force could afford to be very, very picky. And the height waiver that I required, I was not able to attain. So I said, okay, I will do my 4 years since the Air Force paid for college, and then I will get out. But fast forward 21 years later, once I got in and I loved it and enjoyed all things intelligence and then cyberspace operations, which are two of the things that I've been blessed to be able to do, I am still here serving.
Absolutely wonderful. And I think this is what's great about our show is that we get an opportunity to talk about people's various different paths, because too many times we think that it's, a one and done. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's the way you go. And I think you had a very wonderful opportunity to be part of the Secretary of Defense Fellowship. And it sounds like that was something that not many people knew about. So can you share a little bit about what it is and what it opened for you?
Absolutely. So in the Air Force, there are a couple of different points throughout your career where you can request to go to school. So for my SDE, my senior developmental education, I competed and I applied for the Secretary of Defense Executive Fellowship. So as an Air Force reservist, there are only two non-traditional, non-schooling type of SDE opportunities. One is a Harvard Fellowship. The other was the SecDef Fellowship. So I competed, put my name in the hat for both of those and got selected for the SecDef Fellowship. And that was an awesome opportunity. And so the intent of that program is to determine what best practices the Department of Defense should adopt from industry. And so there were 17 of us across all of the services. So there was Air Force, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Air National Guard, and I was the one Air Force reservist selected for this program. So there were 17 of us total, and it was so eye-opening. And so we were all plugged into various Fortune 500 companies, and the one that I got assigned to was Cisco. It was awesome. You know, Cisco is a company with incredible scale, but it's not necessarily a defense first mindset, right? You don't think of Cisco necessarily and think DoD like some of the other options that there were fellows who were at Raytheon and CACI and Booz Allen Hamilton. So those really military adjacent where you have a lot of retired military and senior leadership, Cisco was not that. So it was so fascinating as I had to learn a new lexicon and learning to navigate business outcomes and customers and margins and things that were very different from mission and operations, and just the metrics were just vastly different. But even with that, it ultimately shaped how I looked at leadership, how I looked at accountability, how I looked at speed. And just one pivotal moment for me during that fellowship, as I was a fly on the wall looking at how corporate operated, was I also leaned on my leadership lens coming from the military. And as I connected with very senior leaders at Cisco, I shared, hey, these are just some insights that I have. And perhaps you'd like to know what I'm seeing as a neutral fly on the wall. And so I met with so many senior leaders within that company, but one was Rachel Barger. So not to confuse anyone on this podcast, so another Rachel was Rachel Barger, who at that time was the head of sales for the Americas. And I met her and I just shared with her as I got her insights and trying to understand how she was leading sales for Cisco. I just offered, hey, do you mind if I share just some things that I'm noticing and about leadership and about developing teams, and just at a very tactical level that I was at, to someone very senior, because that's just not necessarily a vantage point that someone extremely senior always gets to see. And she really appreciated that. And from that, we just had this great connection where I told her probably in one of our very first calls, like, you're going to be my mentor. You're going to be my friend. Like, you're just awesome, because there were just so many great things. And she's such an amazing talent that she was someone who I just really, really connected with. And fast forward, the very nonlinear path that I took while I was in that SecDef fellowship, I always planned to go back to the Air Force Reserve full-time. A lot of people don't necessarily know that you can be full-time as a reservist. That is an option for your status. And that is what I had done up until that point. And it was another mentor in the Air Force Reserve, Jay McManus, who, when I was just chatting with him about halfway through the fellowship, which lasts for about a year, and he asked me, Chappie, which is my call sign, he said, well, Chappie, why aren't you leveraging this fellowship to see what else is out there? And up until that point, I hadn't even thought about it, right? I was just used to, this is what I do. This is what I'm going to do. I'll stay until I get about 20 years, and then I'll figure out what life looks like after. And so as I started doing more research and I started just really looking at, okay, what am I currently doing? What would I like to do? It just weighed on me more and more that maybe this is a viable option. And then on the personal side, I can tell you one of the biggest things for me, I had been swimming very hard in my career up until that point, naturally, to be the one person chosen from the Air Force Reserve. You can imagine I was working pretty hard, burning the candle at both ends. And while I was at that fellowship, it honestly was the first time that I fully felt present as a mom. I have two young daughters, and not the rush of, okay, I've got to hurry up. I've got to, pick the kids up late, drop them off early. Back in the days when my kids were daycare age, they're now, one's almost 12 and the other is 13. When they were daycare aged, I would get charged at least twice a month. Anyone who has daycare age children knows that, late pickup fee. And at least twice a month, I would budget for me showing up late just because a meeting ran long or something happened. And so during that fellowship, like I said, on the seeing a different vantage point from the military, which not better, not worse, just vastly different, and learning that. And then also on the personal side, seeing how life could look with two, teenage age daughters now, and knowing how I wanted to really be present for all of the things and chaperone the field trips and not have to leave them early. It just made sense to me. So again, my very long answer to your short question, when I started looking at, okay, what are the options going to be? Rachel was one of those people who, as I stated, I was connected to at Cisco. While I was at the fellowship, she left Cisco to go to UKG. And so I just reached out to her as a mentor, a friend, and then a sponsor. She then became a sponsor, someone who was speaking my name in rooms that I wasn't in, and ultimately created this chief of customer operations position that I ultimately ended up going to. And I had the wonderful opportunity of, for a solid year, I was her right hand for anything external customer facing. So all of her meetings, whether it be on site, whether it be virtual, to connect with UKG customers and ensure that from a sales standpoint and a go-to-market standpoint that they had what they needed.
And I'm really
love
glad that you sort of mentioned the difference between mentor and sponsor, because a lot of people don't understand that, and I'm just going to do a brief little, ad lib for this. So mentor is someone who coaches you, someone who you run questions by. A sponsor can be a completely different person, and usually is a completely different person who knows your capabilities, knows your strengths, knows your desires, and as you said, can be in that room where decisions are being made to advance that you're not going to have access to. So thank you for sharing that. So back to Rachel in the studio.
I've never met a bad Rachel, so I definitely understand why you became quick friends there, Stephanie. And I also want to say I love just the story you shared about kind of stepping out. I think I heard two things and kind of that journey there in your career jungle gym, if you will, that I don't hear very often. One, kind of challenging upwards, providing feedback and things that you don't see oftentimes in the corporate space. And then secondary to that, I love that you discovered life-work balance. Again, something you don't always hear in the corporate space. So thank you for kind of pointing onto both of those, and I'm sure we'll dig into that a little bit more. But I do want to talk a little bit more about kind of that transition. So I know you had a wonderfully named mentor who provided some guidance and took that new career opportunity over there. But going into sales is a pretty big leap, if I do say so myself. It's one where there's a lot of uncertainty. It can be a little nerve-wracking. It puts you kind of out there having to have all of the conversations, and dare I say, quota can kind of be a little scary. So what kind of really caused that leap of faith?
Yes. So sales was never the original part of the plan for me. It scared me tremendously. For anyone who is in the military, we know down to the cent what our paycheck is. On the 1st and 15th, it is very consistent with the exception of government shutdowns. You know that you're getting paid. So sales and commission and quota carrying just really was something that I didn't understand. So it terrified me. And as I was working for Rachel, I got the opportunity. She's the president of Go to Market in UKG. So essentially everything from marketing to sales as software sales to customer success after someone has implemented our software. All of those things fell in her purview. And so I got the opportunity to see various sides of go to market to see, okay, well, maybe there's something else that I can do. Maybe it's partners. Maybe it's services. Maybe it's something else, because I just was so terrified of quota carrying and commission based, but it just kept pulling me back. And again, leaning on that great mentor, Rachel Barger, when I chatted with her, I said, I love customer facing. I love engaging with customers. I love being on site with customers. But man, that commission just really worries me. And she had some great advice. She said, well, just try it. And if you don't like it, then you'll do something else. And that for me was so eye-opening. And I think most of the people who have served a long time in the military can understand this and empathize with it. We are so used to the concept of I'm going to do this thing for 20 years and not I can try something. And if I don't like it, I can leave. I can quit. I can get fired. There's so many different opportunities. It's not necessarily forever. And that was it's something that was so simple that it was profound to me that wasn't the way that my brain operated. As I opened this call, I've done the same job in the Air Force for 21 years, right? Multiple different assignments. However, I have been an Air Force officer for 21 years. And so this concept of, wow, Stephanie, you can try something, and if you don't like it, you can go do something else. And it's just business. No one's feelings get hurt if you quit. Just like if companies have layoffs, it's not a personal thing. It is business. And so that was something that really, as I thought more and more about it, it was, Stephanie, just try it. And I did. And I'm so happy that I did, because I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. There is tremendous upside, which means you have a base salary, but if you meet your quota or if you exceed your quota, you get a lot more than what your base salary is. And as a mom with two teenage daughters who like to travel and go on vacations and go to concerts and things of that nature, it's amazing to be able to provide this life for my children that I had no idea even existed. And again, I just go back to my mentor, Rachel, and just how grateful I am that she sat down with me and would talk through, okay, these are the things that you want to negotiate, which is another huge thing where I love to tell people, if you're transitioning military, definitely talk to someone who's doing the job that you think that you want to do, to fully understand all of the different things that you can negotiate, like a non-recoverable draw. Most people might not know what that means, but that, for those of us who are commission based, that means that you can negotiate part of your commission to be guaranteed in your salary, regardless of whether or not you meet quota. So there are lots of things that can make life less scary if you understand what those options are. And so I'm just super grateful to my mentor, Rachel, for sitting down with me and having multiple conversations about what this life could look like. And then now that I've gotten into it, I absolutely love it.
Okay, so I have to ask, did you go to the Taylor Swift concerts?
My daughter really, really wanted to go. And so I was looking at all of the concerts and, okay, maybe we can fly somewhere. However, when I saw those prices, we had to say no to Tay-Tay, and we went to Sabrina Carpenter. And I can tell you that Sabrina Carpenter did a phenomenal, it was her short and sweet tour. She did a phenomenal job.
Wonderful. So we'll pull back from the Taylor Swift we'll shake that off, and we'll move on back to that ad lib that I did a little bit earlier about building relationships in the corporate world. And, I think that this is not something that I hear a lot of people in the military are trained to do. And so how do you do that building of relationships? Because they're, very important and very valuable.
Absolutely. So it's interesting. In the military, you're ultimately assigned a mentor. Your rater, your supervisor is, in essence, your given mentor. However, I have always found that true mentorship, someone who truly understands what it is that you're trying to do, understands you. And I also look at mentorship as a long-term relationship, not something that's just for one assignment. I truly believe that doesn't just happen. And I have always chosen to be intentional about it in the mentors who I seek and the people who I mentor myself as a senior leader in the Air Force. Very intentional about it. And as I mentioned earlier, I always seek and I always recommend you seek someone who has walked the path that you are intending to walk. People mean well, especially those of us who are at the twilight of our military career and we are getting ready to go off and do something different. I love the, jailhouse lawyers, right, if you will, who give advice about what people should do. However, if you haven't actually negotiated a salary, if you haven't done those things, it is very difficult to give advice on them. And so I just always seek out people who've done the thing that I'm intending to do. And I've always taken a very direct approach in that. Like I said, with my mentor, Rachel, I said, you're going to be my mentor. And oh, by the way, you're also going to be my friend because I think that you're awesome. And I'm happy to say that she is both now. And that is something that I've always done throughout my career. Naturally, when I was a young captain, I didn't put it in that manner, right? However, I would go up to someone, I would email, I would just say, hey, ma'am, sir, do you mind if I get 15 minutes? And I always share this with people. Everyone has 15 minutes. I don't care how busy you are. If you are the president of a company or of the United States, everyone has 15 minutes. So asking someone for an hour, that is a lot. Sometimes 30 minutes can be a bit much, but 15 minutes, most people will not say no to. And I have yet to have someone turn me away for 15 minutes, and I have yet to turn anyone away who only asked for 15 minutes. And I'm very deliberate and intentional with that time, with the questions that I have, with the ask. You should always have some ask because people who are giving mentorship tend to expect that. And just being very deliberate, and the directness that my approach has always been rooted in both respect and then clarity of my intent. And I think that if you lead with that, people are more receptive to it.
Absolutely. So to kind of go back to earlier in our conversation where I was giving you some kudos there for just the career jungle gym and just being willing to kind of share that. I want to kind of apply that now to we talk about folks that might be transitioning out. So do you have any advice? Because I know we started the story, it was, I'm going to be a pilot, I'm going to fly planes, I'm going to do these things. And then it transitioned into this and just really kind of bobbed and weaved and did all of the things. So is there any advice that you would give to some of those transitioning service folks that might be stepping out?
I think the first thing is you don't have to have everything figured out on day one. I think I am a walking billboard of that. My path has not been linear. I truly believe if it doesn't open, it's not your door. That's something that my mom has always said, and that's something that I live by. And I choose to take the lesson from it and not get too wrapped up around why it didn't work out. So you do the best that you can. Perhaps that's not your door and there's another door waiting. So that has always been my approach. As you are transitioning, as you're thinking about what is next, I say don't underestimate how valuable the skills are that you presently have. Leadership, accountability, decision-making under pressure, all of those things are just so inherent to the Department of Defense and our business model and the way in which our whole business model is about grooming and developing someone to one day take our job. That's not how corporate is necessarily. So lean on those skills and the fact that you know that you are very capable. I will also say be open to a path that you never considered. Again, a walking billboard for that. Be open to talking to people who are in software sales or in perhaps a frontline workforce. You never know, right? Just be open to it. I'd also say build relationships early and intentionally. So you never want your first meeting with someone to be where you're asking them to get you a job, right? That comes off very transactional. And again, in those first meetings that I had with Rachel, I was learning from her and I was also giving her something. And then I was saying, oh my God, you're awesome. Can I please stay connected with you? And so it was a very personal relationship that was not transactional. It truly was a relationship. And then lastly, I would say just bet on yourself, even when it feels uncomfortable. If you're comfortable, you're not growing, right? You're not learning. Try something new. And then when in doubt, like my mentor, Rachel, told me, if it doesn't work out, you can do something else.
So much goodness in there. So much goodness in there. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining us. And we didn't even get to talk about your Love You wall, but it looks great. Love everything that's behind you. And just thank you for sharing so many really great stories. We really appreciate it.
Thank you both for having me. This has been such a pleasure. Oh my God, can I come back again?
Yes.
Yes. It was so great hearing Stephanie's journey, and she touched on something that I just love talking about, which is the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. And being really direct when you want someone to be your mentor, that you're not just immediately asking them for something, that you're giving them something in return. She was giving sort of her point of view or her points, but also making sure that it's mutually beneficial when you're asking for a mentor. Versus your sponsor, who is somebody who knows your capabilities, knows the value that you bring to an organization, but also knows what you're trying to strive for. And then they are the executive that's in a room that can speak for you because you're obviously not going to be in that room. What goodness did you gather from Stephanie, Rachel?
So much to gather. But I think what I really walked away from, I just loved her why not approach to everything, not why, or, what I was told, or this, this is my plans. She didn't let height, bring her down, no pun intended, when she wasn't able to be a pilot. And when things just continued to shift and change, I just appreciate that she said, okay. And I love her mom's advice. I think it's such great advice. If that door didn't open, it wasn't your door. So thanks for listening. Make sure you go out there and follow for more episodes and subscribe to our LinkedIn newsletter. You'll find the link in today's show notes. Till next time, see you later, Exit Buddy.
Bye-bye.